You're listening to the Waypoint TV Podcast Network, brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors.
The 1911 is one of the most iconic firearms in history. Designed by John Browning, the 1911 was the standard issue sidearm of the U.S. military from 1911 to 1985. While Colt produced the original, almost every major firearm company has produced its own version. It's wildly revered for its reliability, crisp trigger, and is still a favorite for all types of shooters. Whether you're looking to buy or build a 1911, and just about everything for guns, log on to MidwayUSA.com. At Midway USA, we know the AR-15 is one of the most popular rifles in modern American history. Known for its modularity and widespread use, it's often considered essential to any gun collection. The essential things you need to run an AR-15 are usually always in stock during shortages, things like magazines and 5.56 ammo. Whether you're looking to buy a new AR-15 or buy parts for your modern sporting rifle, log on, and for just about everything for the outdoors, shop MidwayUSA.com.
Join Justin Townsend and the Harvesting Nature crew as they explore the world of cooking wild fish and game while sharing recipes, tips, tricks, and lessons learned from their pursuit of wild food. We sure hope you ate before the show, 'cause you're gonna leave hungry. This is the Wild Fish and Game Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Harvesting Nature's Wild Fish and Game Podcast. You got your host here, Justin Townsend, joined by Adam and a very special guest who I'm going to introduce here momentarily. But today we're going to be talking, of course, about wild game, a little bit about travel, a little bit about different foods, all kinds of stuff. I think we're looking forward to a good chat. I think I'll keep my comments short today. We just released our Wild Pig Camp with Hank Shaw. It's coming up in the spring 2025. We've got some spice blends back in restock. But other than that, I'm going to save my comments for the conversation. Kick it over to Adam real quick. What you got?
Not too much. I thought the fall mushrooming was all over with because we had a couple light frosts. And yesterday I found a massive hen of the woods for my talkie mushroom. So that's probably my last fall mushroom of the year. And I'm super excited about it. It was I don't know. I had to use two hands to hold it, so it was a nice big one. So I'm looking forward to experimenting some with that and making some recipes. So that's about it for me today.
Yeah, I forgot to mention our last episode too. We were out deer hunting, and I found a chicken of the woods. I actually sent you a picture, and I was like, check this out. It was pretty massive too. I didn't take all of it. I left some, but I made the chicken of the woods chicken and waffles with like a miso maple syrup on top. Oh, it was phenomenal.
Incredible.
Yeah. But let's see. So our next episode, we're going to have Jean-Paul Bourgeois. Gosh, I practiced and I still messed it up. Bourgeois. He's going to be on here. So if you have any questions for him, send them in. He's got I think Duck Camp Dinners is the name of his series that he does on YouTube. Former current Meat Eater contributor as well. But I'll go ahead and introduce our guest, and we'll get it kicked off. So today's guest is a chef, hunter, angler, writer, and Emmy-winning and 4-time James Beard Award-winning TV personality and social justice advocate. As the creator and host of Bizarre Foods franchise, Andrew Zimmern's Driven by Food, MSNBC's What's Eating America, Magnolia Network's Emmy-nominated Family Dinner, and the Emmy-winning Zimmern List, he has devoted his life to exploring and promoting cultural acceptance, tolerance, and understanding through food. Lately, he has been promoting the importance of wild food through his show, Andrew Zimmern's Wild Game Kitchen, on the Outdoor Channel. Andrew Zimmern, welcome to the Wild Fish and Game Podcast.
What the fuck did you need me for? You maple miso chicken of the woods waffle surprise, whatever the hell you're you don't need me.
We do. We still need you. We need you.
All right. We'll see. I've got to bring my game. I mean, I thought you were just, throwing a pheasant in a crock pot and hitting it with some cream of celery soup and calling it a day, but you guys you're chefing the shit out of this thing. All right.
We get down.
Okay. No, I understand. That's fine. Hold on one second. Okay.
Stretch on out.
All right, let's go.
All right. Well,
Let's do this.
outside my introduction, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you got into hunting, into fishing, and where did the intersection between all of it come together in the kitchen?
Well, you left out my new show, Fields of Fire, and about half of my other shows and my books and all my other things. Was my bio too big? I mean,
you're accomplished. We're trying to pack it all in.
No, you want to know, Justin? I'm just old. And if you keep doing stuff the way you're doing it, Adam, you keep doing stuff the way you're doing it, you just wind up with none of it was really intentional. And certainly not on my radar screen when, I was growing up in New York in the 1960s. I mean, I was a latchkey kid. I loved to cook. I spent my summers out on Long Island, fishing, foraging, although we really didn't call it fishing and foraging. We called it having fun. Mm-hmm. My mother had me harvesting rose hips in the dunes to make rose hip jelly. My father had me digging clams I actually thought, up until a couple of years ago when I was being interviewed about this, that it was like a father-son kind of bonding thing, but it wasn't. It was slave labor. He had figured out that he could sort of sit and float on his inner tube ring and, drink a couple Budweisers. And I was like, Dad, look how many I got with this one. And I would just fill up buckets and buckets of clams. And then I'd be exhausted and sleep for the rest of the day. And he would have, a 50-pound bag of clams pulled out of Barnes Landing. We crabbed. He would lower me by my leg to pull mussels out from, the giant rocks of the jetties. We loved to go surf casting for striped bass and bluefish when the tides and the seasons were right. Mackerel when it wasn't. Eeling in 3 Mile Harbor. He taught me how to clean and strip and grill my first eel when I was like 6 years old. Not a lot of 6-year-old kids in 1967 were, peeling and eating eel. But man, they were monsters. I mean, like 5 foot long, 4 or 5 pounders. I mean, just fat monsters. And on the grill, I don't know if there's a better fish to grill than eel. Really, really fatty, central bone. I mean, it's like eating a chicken wing. It's all meat. And you just throw away the little pencil bone in the middle, but you can just grill it till it's crisp on the outside and baste it with whatever you like. It's a really delicious fish for people who haven't gone eeling or who have the opportunity and have said no in the past. It's a real blast. Then, when I was a teenager, I turned 14. My dad said there's no more allowance, but I was a pretty accomplished home cook. My grandmother taught me, my mother, my father. I'd eaten a lot. And I got a job at my godmother's restaurant, which was a seafood restaurant. And the rest, as they say, is history. I guess I was, 8 when I started learning about riflery at summer camp, sleepaway camp. And I was a good shot. Competed in the Maine State 13 and under small bore riflery championship. So, you had to be pretty accomplished just to get in that. Got my ass kicked by, some local kids that shot year round. But I competed and I did well. And so I guess I wasn't, a gun wasn't foreign to me. So when some friends said in high school, let's go duck hunting, I was like, okay, because I was all about cooking it up. I'd never been duck hunting before. It was a thrill, limited out the first day. The next day we went goose hunting. That was even more fun. And we just ate like kings. And I think, no pun intended, I was hooked. I had always spent time out in the fields and on the water and in the woods. Moving to Minnesota 32 and a half years ago certainly escalated my opportunities to hunt and fish. This is a hunting and fishing state. I mean, we closed down for deer opener and fish opener and pheasant opener and turkey opener. And I mean, just it seems that, every place has, sign closed, gone hunting. And, while I'm not sure, I'm sure there's a pocket or two of enthusiasm for this, but we're not, we're not West Virginia, right? Where people still hunt in the evening for the next day or hunt in the morning for their supper, which is something I got really turned on to as being invaluable and something that we're missing these days. When I started making television. Television gave me access to hundreds of different cultures, all of which hunt, fish, and forage. Mm-hmm. All of them cook and eat wild foods. All of them eat everything on the animal or repurpose it. They may use the bones for tools or various other parts of an animal for jewelry or something more practical. Stir sticks. I mean, femur bones in a lot of African cultures are used instead of stir sticks for cooking. So nothing really goes unused. And then I sort of discovered that other, first world cultures, were also using every part of the animal. Japan, for example, where it would be disrespectful to the animal not to use the skin, the bones, everything about it in a way that Americans don't. And I guess season 1 of Bizarre Foods, not the first episode, not the second episode, but I think episode 3 that we filmed was in Ecuador. And I was in the Amazonian basin of that country in the southwest. And a Pilche tribal leader asked me if I wanted to go bird hunting with him. And I said, sure. And we went bird hunting, and he was shooting wild chickens on the wing in dense foliage, right? So when you turn, there's trees and branches. I mean, this is the tropical rainforest. This is the Amazon jungle. And he had a bow about 1.5 feet long and was using flightless arrows, right? So he went 3 for 3.
Wow.
I mean, in the same part of the bird with the first 3 birds we saw. And I literally had never seen anything like that in my life. And I said to him, I said, my Lord, I mean, that's a pretty impressive bit of shooting there, Donaldo. And he had no perspective. It was fascinating. As an indigenous tribes person of First Peoples of Lake Pilchacoa and the Pilche River system, he grew up where all the kids learned how to do that by the time they were 6, 7, 8. In fact, they went out and hunted while dads were doing other work. You taught your kids to hunt so they could bring food to the table. And every kid in the tribe growing up was the same level of expertise as a marksman, right? So my question, he just looked at me completely puzzled. It was one of the first lessons in cultural dissonance that I ever had, where in our world growing up, there's people who have a chance to learn how to be a good shot, and some people just have no interest in ever even holding a gun or looking at one, right? So, or a bow and arrow. And so some people are better than others. To him, he kept looking at me and looking at the translator like, what is this guy talking about? Like, I'm just getting dinner. I'm not it was so foreign to him. Needless to say, I tried my hand with these flightless arrows. I mean, trying to shoot a bird on the wing in the jungle. I mean, I literally just saw a shadow go by. I mean, just like a meteor at night if you're looking up in the sky. And, Donaldo's just bringing down bird after bird. Like, thank God he was there because we had a very good lunch. We cut up little bits of the wild chicken meat and put them on little wooden hooks that he attached to a piece of string, and threw it into a pond. I literally I was thinking about it, and I almost said to him, the water's brown. I mean, there's too much leaf matter. There's no fish in there. Of course, I'm bringing my whole Western, I know everything about the outdoors vibe to this fellow who literally embodies everything when it comes to ancient wisdom that you could possibly imagine. I mean, his skill set quadrupled all three of ours put together. And it's almost like he could read my mind. He just kind of laughed at me like, 3 seconds later, he has a 4 or 5 pound fish on his hook, wooden hook, handmade, with string that he carefully wound back and put into his pouch, because that was one of the most valuable things he owned, was that piece of line. He could make a hook, right? He made the bow and arrow. He made the flightless arrows, right? The arrow tip was made of seashell, right? He didn't need a lot to bring down a 3-pound bird, right? But he, rope, string, very, very valuable thing. So we ate really well, and I just remember that whole experience. And I immediately, when we went back, we returned from that trip, and I sort of took over the storytelling war room, and I said, we're going to do a hunting and fishing story in every episode of Bizarre Foods. We're not going to put a circle around it and say, here comes the family meal, which we always put in the show. Here comes the hunting, fishing scene. I just felt that even in cities we were in, we should be telling those types of stories because of that cultural dissonance that I experienced. Well, once I started doing that and the show became popular, which it did after, the first couple episodes aired, the vault of experiences opened up for me in a very massive way. And that's really where I had, 70, 80 outdoors experiences that, folks who do this professionally wait a lifetime for. I mean, I did a driven pheasant shoot at Balmoral Castle with the Queen's huntsman, and I went into the gun room, which I assume would be a room like the one you're in or the one I'm in. It literally looks like the room of treasure in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, it just goes on forever, right? With the gun collection that the Windsors have, right? And the guy, the royal huntsman who was assigned to me, right, to make sure I didn't shoot anyone, I guess, by accident, asked me. We were at this wall, and he just said, "Which gun do you want to shoot with?" And just the most famous gun makers in the world are spending for the most incredible woods, and I looked up, and there were the names of everyone who'd shot with them listed, some going back as much as 200 years. Oh, wow. The shotgun really hasn't changed that much in a long time from a technology standpoint. But I selected a gun from the 40s, and there were only 2 people who had fired it before me: Winston Churchill and Fidel Castro. And I was the third person, and they wrote my name. They wrote my name down underneath it and the date, and I was just like, stupid. And on the flip side of things, I got to, in Namibia, to be with tribal people who are allowed to hunt freely on their own land. Of course, the government has to allow you in to the country, and then allow you to hunt, and then allow you to contact those people. But television, being what it was, and the attention that it would pay towards the plight of these tribes people as modernizing the country moved in, and some of the traditional pathways with which they fed themselves. I got to shoot wild antelope and lots of big game. I took a massive wildebeest, I think, in that episode. One of the more petrifying hunts that I've ever been on, only because to start, there's my guide who took me out alone, and we had one cameraman who ran sound and everything, because you had to have a very small group. So there's three of us, and we're walking like 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles, and we're going after wildebeest. So I'm just like, I don't see the wildebeest, and at times he's like, shh, 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 making too much noise, and finally he is able to communicate to me by drawing on his hand, and peeking up in the tall grass, and I'm just like, wildebeest don't like crouch when they walk. I mean, they're big. They're actually, the large males can be 5.5 feet high at the shoulder, and we're in 4.5 foot tall, grassland. And I'm kind of looking at him and not understanding, and he draws a cat face on his hand, and I'm just like, I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me, and I realized the way they track animals, why track a wildebeest when it's so much easier to track the lions that don't have predators there? So the lion is just walking through the grass, going to where he knows the wildebeest are going to be, and that the wildebeest herd is going to kick an older male, which is what we were going to hunt, out. He'd be alone, defenseless, because the herding animals will sometimes all go after a lion pride and shoo them away, right? But the old males are defenseless. So, we were following these lions, and I remember turning to my cameraman and saying, if we die eaten by lions, all that will be left of us are like bloody clothes. And they may never know where we are. I say, no one may ever know we're dead. And this guy kind of flipped out a little bit. But I was so scared because we were trailing the lions. The lion was hunting upwind, right? So the lion is hunting. So he really couldn't smell us. That's why I had to be really quiet. But then the freakish thing was the guy puts me on his back. He's lying down, and he gets up and has these 3 sticks with a leather thong between them and just plants them down. And so all I had to do was slap my rifle into the notch of the tripod. Wildebeest is right in my sights. I shoot the wildebeest. The wildebeest runs 50 feet and lays down and dies. And then he's like, hurry, hurry, hurry. And I'm thinking to myself, what is wrong with this guy? We have to get the camera crew. We have to record all this. Like, a lot of stuff has to happen. So I'm telling him to slow down. And he holds up his hand where he had taken dirt with the kitty cat picture. And he points at that again.
Hurry up, the lions are coming.
That's exactly right. Because now they smell the blood. And, that was, episode 12. And so that kind of hooks you on the excitement of it. And, I've hunted on 5 continents. I've gone after just about everything. And I've been lucky enough to do it with just amazing human beings, castles in Scotland, going after, big stags, and, fishing, wild tuna with Hawaiians off of canoes, 10 miles off the islands, and everything in between. Bird hunting with, Navajo, and bird hunting with tribes people in Thailand. It really was quite the experience. And now I just do it, when I can, and lucky enough to have a lot of fun friends. And I just think there's nothing better than spending time in the outdoors.
Holy smokes. That's awesome. It's quite the adventure, quite the, just like history in it. That's really great. My question is, and it kind of stems off of that, and so like as you've traveled around, as you've met all these people sort of around the world and who, hunt, fish, consume wild food pretty regularly, do you think that here in North America we have placed the same value on it as in a lot of other places?
No, we live in a disposable society that's convenience driven. I, I I don't think we need to bring back the horse and buggy, but in our obsession with speed and convenience and new things, we oftentimes discard cultural pathways that are to our detriment. I truly believe that spending time in the woods, on the water, out in nature, I don't care if you're collecting leaves for a collage, making watercolors, hunting and fishing, it doesn't matter. We've disconnected from our outdoor world. The outdoors has so many lessons to teach us, preparedness, safety, beauty, uh, philosophical contemplation, poetic contemplation, an appreciation for those things that were not created by us. I mean, I could keep, bookmarking things that I think anyone would agree, if you're just halfway awake culturally, we're all better off appreciating in some way. It doesn't have to be your thing. I'm not asking, everyone to be, poetically contemplate a sunset.
Mm-hmm.
But if you haven't been outdoors enough to see the difference between a late October, ice cold, end of the month Minnesota sunset over a cornfield, or a sunrise in a duck blind in South America, forget about the hunting or 10-foot waves crashing over the front of your boat as you're trying to make it back from a deep sea fishing trip, and everyone on hand needs to work hard so that the captain can focus on heading into the waves. I just think those are lessons and experiences that everyone, would benefit from having. There used to be a time in our country where everyone did experience those things. Now, look, that was also a time when the majority of people lived on the coasts, where 80% of Americans, farmed. I'm not asking us to step back multiple generations. Modernism has accomplished a lot. But I do think that spending time outdoors is something that is increasingly becoming less and less important to our culture. And I think I don't think that's a positive thing.
No, I agree with you. I think wholeheartedly on that. I battle it with my kids and their friends and just kind of seeing that. Thankfully, not as much battling it with my own kids because I drag them outdoors every chance I get to, because I think there's so much importance in that. And I think culturally too, I'm Choctaw from the Choctaw Nation in Oklahoma myself, and that's where I grew up. And it's like we lived outside, like not we as a people, but like me growing up, like me and my family immediately, like we lived outside. You worked outside, you played outside. Your parents were like, just go outside, like go find something, go wander around the back pasture, or go in the backyard. And I think that created a drive for me to just get out, and also created a curiosity into me. Like I can be out now. And I think hunting and fishing is taking me a lot of really beautiful places to where I would be like, all right, what's over the next ridge? Like what's over the next, like let's keep going. Let's see, like, let's just explore. This is more than just about going out and catching a fish or shooting an animal or picking a mushroom. It's about just like that sort of immersive experience you get from the outdoors. And, I don't know. I moved to the East Coast. I'm in DC now, and I live in the middle of DC, so I enjoy spending my week in DC, and then on the weekend just getting out into like rural Maryland and just like going and sitting just in like a blind or walking through the woods to hunt squirrels. It's just like it's good just to kind of plug back in.
100%. I mean, look, it's a cliche. I've yet to find someone who is serious about the outdoors who hasn't shared the exact same experience, and that is and I'm sure you're just going to nod your heads when I say it, but my best days outdoors, I've never put a fish in the ice bin, and I've never put the gun to my shoulder.
Yeah.
It's just been extraordinary days outside, seeing amazing things with people that I care about, just giving each other, a bunch of crap, enjoying each other, talking about real stuff, experiencing something that made the time just disappear. And some people would say, well, don't you go out to get food? And the answer is, well, that's kind of the goal when I'm thinking about it and I go to bed the night beforehand. But I've learned now, after spending a lot of time doing this, that I'm usually, and this is because I'm privileged, I have food in the refrigerator in my home, and I'm not worried about where my family's next meal is coming from. So the imperative to come back with something is lessened. But now I'm just like, as long as something exciting happens, as long as something really thrilling happens, I'm good with it. Now I know that there's usually the opportunity, if I've planned the trip right and I've done my homework, I can usually see a lot of incredible animals and experience a lot of really cool things. And, I'll eat a stale peanut butter and jelly sandwich or two, and it's just a magical day. It really is.
Knives, machetes, saws, and shears, multi-tools, shovels, swords, axes, spears, hatchets, and tomahawks. If it cuts, snips, slices, or chops, Midway USA has it. Find great gift ideas in our huge selection of pocket knives and other everyday carry folding knives. Make a statement or create a family legacy with one of our top-of-the-line hunting knives. We've got a great selection of manual and electric sharpeners, too. For just about everything for the outdoors, check out MidwayUSA.com. Midway USA brand product designers have one straightforward goal: develop high-quality, technically sound products and deliver them to customers at reasonable prices. If you are immersed in the shooting sports industry and pay close attention to every single detail, you know our products are built right and stand up to everyday use. Who has shooting mats and range bag systems to hunting clothing and just about everything for the outdoors? Log on and shop 24/7 with super fast shipping. MidwayUSA.com.
Sometimes it's just even the things that you've seen daily. I'm thinking of some squirrels that I just sat watching, waiting for a deer to show up. The deer never showed up. I watched two squirrels for like 3 hours as my ass got sore and sore. And I'd never seen squirrels do the things that they were doing because I never just stopped and watched squirrels for 3 hours straight. And it's something magical that comes out of that, just being present and focused in the woods without. And that was a cool day. I remember that more than the other, not more than shooting a deer, but I really remember that years later.
1,000%.
Yeah,
1,000%. I actually have a bunch of funny squirrel stories, only because I was really curious about them, and they're everywhere. And then finally someone said, "Well, you got to eat them," and I'm like, okay. And I was very lucky. The first squirrel that I ate were some really, really, really fat red squirrels in Tennessee. And I mean, they were like turkeys. I mean, these things were huge, but their diet was so incredible. Same thing in West Virginia. My preferred place to hunt squirrel, only because some of the ridge lines in West Virginia, they're only eating beech nuts the last month before the snow comes. And they're basically finishing themselves and making their meat fattier and better tasting. And I'll put that squirrel meat, that West Virginia squirrel meat from my ridge that I can't even talk about because no one goes there except the guy who takes me. And sometimes I open up my big fat mouth a little too much. About
just write it down and show us.
But it is, the most delicious food, and I'll tell you something funny. It just aired on Field to Fire last Monday, but we told the story in the show. But I was in real life. It was even freakier. I winged a squirrel. We were shooting with 22s. I winged a squirrel, and I thought for a while he was hanging on the tree. And the guy I was hunting with says, I don't know. And we walked up, and the thing that I thought I saw was like just a weird piece of bark, and as is often the case. And we saw this squirrel run by us on this log that had fallen about 25 minutes later. And we could have sworn that we saw blood, but we couldn't tell where on the animal. And, we looked on the log and we couldn't find any. And we spent 6 hours, on, hunting squirrel. And it was a really lousy day. It was really windy, and the squirrels just were holing up places. And then we saw another squirrel go run into a hole in a tree, and we sat there contemplating this thing. And my guide was like, well, you want to wait here? And I'm like, the biggest waste of time in the world is waiting, staring at a hole for a squirrel on a cold, windy day to stick its head outside. What are we going to do? Shoot it and then it falls inside the tree? I'm like, it doesn't matter. We need that squirrel to leave, right?
Yeah.
And at the very, very end of the day, when we're about to call it quits, because the weather is just, we're not seeing a lot of movement, nothing. We spot another squirrel. We decide, I couldn't get a bead on it from where I was. And I said to him, if you have a shot, take it. So he shoots this squirrel, and we find the squirrel, and he'd shot it once, and we saw the fresh wound that had felled the squirrel, and I had shot the squirrel before in the ass, through and through in its thigh, and it turned out that one of our videographers had gone back to that log and found blood trail.
Oh, wow.
So it turned out that we had seen that same squirrel 3 different times.
Oh, wow.
And what are the odds of shooting the same squirrel twice in a big forest in northern Minnesota? About a bazillion to one. I was like, and we had the whole thing on film, which was the fun part about making Field to Fire, which is that I get to go out hunting or fishing and then head back to my outdoor kitchen and actually cook things up and create recipes for people, whether they're using squirrel or whether they're going to use pork chops. The recipe is still the same. And, I don't want to disenfranchise anyone. There's some people who just like watching me do my thing, and they're not outdoors people. They're not going to eat squirrel. Maybe it makes them curious about it. I shouldn't say that they won't ever eat it, but it's a really wonderful experience to be able to then share what I do with the food after I harvest it. How I cook it and how I treat it. So that's a real blast.
I think it circles it back around. It completes the circle, right? It takes, a lot of experiences you've had throughout your past of like growing up in hunting and fishing, and then traveling around and seeing people just like bring it back in. And then the approach you're sort of taking it with in Field to Fire, as well as like, hey, here's this action that happens and here's the result. But also like there's more commonality in it than people think, even if you're not eating squirrel. Like,
and by the way, there's not. With a lot of people always ask me what were some of my favorite. As I was out publicizing this season, and doing a lot of interviews, and so what's your favorite stuff? And I wound up talking a lot about certain types of fish, and the reason is that when we have to shoot is dictated by when we have to deliver shows to the network. So we sort of work backwards on the calendar, and then we have to pick where we're going and where we can get, multiple episodes in the same place so that we're not doing too many, crew moves. We can sit in Charleston, South Carolina, in a hotel, and each day two different fish species, and then go deer hunting, and then get pigs. We could shoot 4 episodes in one 5 or 6 day period in South Carolina, and I had the chance to get a fish species. One of my favorite fish to eat in the whole world is sheep's head. And there's no commercial fishery for sheep's head. They're too hard to catch. So unless you have a friend who's going to give you one, you have to catch it yourself. And it is a very tricky, that fish, you can barely feel the bite. They have huge, they have goat teeth with big gaps in them, but they have very powerful jaw. And so if you're fishing with tiny live green crab or little shrimp, they can be crushing at this thing where the hook isn't. They're kind of persnickety, and they savor their food. But the fillets, the fish itself tastes so good because of its diet. I mean, it only eats tiny baby oysters, tiny baby shrimp, and tiny baby crabs. That's all it eats. And I'm just like, this is the best. I mean,
it's like a sweet buttery kind of flesh.
Oh my God. I mean, in this, where we were getting them, my guide told me these ones here, he likes to fish them on wrecks. So he knew of a boat that had gone down in this one body of water and took us to this place. And he said, this is my honey hole. I don't take anyone here. He said, so, he told the camera guys, you can't shoot this over there. It's certain land where he says, I don't want anyone who lives down here to know where we are. And we're like, okay, great. No problem. And we got bites right away. And he said there's no oysters here in this elbow in the estuary. And he says there's very few shrimp. They're closer to the shoreline in shallower water, and the redfish are going after them. And the next day we went and got redfish in almost the same spot. But he said my kids got us a bucket of these little baby crabs to fish with. And I'm telling you, I cooked up one of those fillets that night on a hot plate in my motel room because I just had to. And it just reeked of crab. I mean,
oh wow.
Yeah, animals taste of what they eat, and which is why I like wild hogs so much. Depending on where you take them and what country, what they're eating and what time of year is very important to me. I'm a lot of wild hog in the deep south. The problem is warm weather, right? Breaks down the fat differently. They eat differently. I like to take hogs in cold weather zones where they're eating a lot of ground nuts, a lot of fallen fruit from trees, sometimes the fruit that humans may not be able to eat, but it puts on a visible layer of fat that's different than their warm weather fat layer. You can see the line in them, and when you're skinning them, and look, I'll now talk out of the other side of my mouth. Still, the best wild pig that I ever ate was one that I got in Cuba, where the farmers down there, the campesinos who work the tobacco fields, trap. They don't kill the wild hogs. They trap them, and they take them alive, and then they finish them on coconut and date palms.
Holy
so
sluts.
for a month before they harvest the animal, they feed them only date palms and only coconut palm.
Wow.
So immature little coconuts, right?
Yeah.
So you grill or roast that animal, and the meat literally caramelizes without any fat because there's so much sugar in the meat itself. It's still the best tasting pig I've ever eaten in my life. And, a real lesson to not only, as hunters, we all know, and fishermen, you follow the food system to find the animal you like. That's, a pretty sure way to get where you want to be. but that the flavor of different species and different animals is so much predicated on and about their diet. It makes me a pickier outdoors person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm pretty indiscriminate about pigeon, which is one of my favorite birds to hunt because they're very finicky eaters. They'll only eat seed. Really doesn't matter where you take them. But you know, where on the flyaway the ducks are, what time of year is it? I don't even like to go. All my friends are like duck opener, and I'm like, I want the last 3 days of the season. I want to go where there's the last little bit of open water. I want to get those last canvas backs, that I can get. And they're just like, wow, you're picky. And it's like, well, yeah, limits are down. And if I'm going to take a couple wild duck, I know where to go. I know what I like. I know what I want. I said, I'll hunt other things while you're out duck hunting. And I love waterfowling. I mean, that's as fun for me as anything. But yeah, I get pretty persnickety about it because once you've tasted the difference, and obviously I come at it from a culinary point of view, it is the taste of those birds is so much better. The taste of deer in different parts of the country based on diet is spectacular. I love Minnesota. I love Minnesotans. I love hunting my home state. We have the best tasting grouse on planet Earth up on the North Shore of Lake Superior. There's something about what the birds have available to eat. There's something about the cold weather. There's something about the whole 9 yards. It's a really hard hunt and really, 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 really tricky. And you need some really, really, really good dogs, and you got to be fast. But boy, is it rewarding. By the same token, Minnesota deer compared to like Tennessee deer or Maryland deer or other venison that I've taken other places, it's just not as good based on diet. They're eating too much scrub plant, and just the meat doesn't develop the same way. So, I like to plan my hunting and fishing around where I'm going to get the best food for eating, and it's a great way to live.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was thinking about just like growing up in Oklahoma, and then I've traveled kind of all around. I've hunted on the West Coast and the East Coast and all that, and I still think southern white-tailed deer is up there, but I don't know, pronghorn antelope from Wyoming is at the top of my list as far as like flavor.
Delicious.
Oh, so good.
Delicious. Have you ever hunted kudu in Africa or had the opportunity to taste it?
Nope. Adam has.
Tasted it. I tasted it. It's incredible. Yeah, I didn't get to hunt it, but
yeah. You want to eat, and fresh, or aged. When we've taken them, we've hung them for a couple of days, and I think it eats like veal. I've never tasted anything better. Wild African porcupine is the same way from Botswana. There's a couple animals in certain parts of the world that because of their diet and where they are, I'm just like, yeah, give me that every day of the week. I mean, kudu might be my favorite wild red meat. Certain species of other African antelope are really, 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 off the charts. Elk is right up there for me as well. I have eaten other people's moose. It's still on my list. I'm dying. I'm hoping next September to get up to Canada and take my own first moose. But I gotta.
Are you going to Newfoundland for that?
Moose
or?
Meat. Not sure. There's a couple different places that I can go in September, and I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to go do that. There's some folks at some outdoor magazines and stuff that are really interested in documenting that for me. And I'm on one hand, it's great to have be hosted somewhere that's great, but I also don't want to go on a commercialized moose hunt. I kind of like to be out there with a friend or two and go do it ourselves. But it is, humping out a lot of meat, on a couple miles. I had a day, I thought I was going to die in Hawaii, on the top of a volcano hunting wild sheep. That, the guy looked at me and I realized that it was something that we had never discussed in the couple of days of planning before we went up there, that we were going to drive to a point and kind of walk at an angle kind of downhill to this place where the animals came, and that there's no water source for these wild sheep. They gather at this place where all this dew collects. There's so much dew, it's almost running into this pasture, like it's wet, the ground, and they eat the grass there. And because of this cold and then sunlight, and it's Hawaii, because of the where it is, it produces a ton of grass, and a ton of dew is collected. So that's their water source, is eating this grass. And my guide said, we're just going to set up here, against this tree, this fallen tree, and give us a little bit of cover, and we'll get some sheep. And then I realized, as I was about to pull the trigger, is we're going to have to take everything out with us, and illegal there to leave entrails and other things behind. And we had been given special permission by the state to go up there. We were documenting this for a TV show. And I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And I especially when he said, by the way, make sure you have a couple bullets in your gun. And I'm like, and he goes, the second one. And I said, the second one? And I'm like, and I'm kind of looking at him. He says, well, there's no pressure on this herd. Like every couple of years, someone gets permission to hunt here. So there's a chance these sheep have never even heard a gunshot. Oh. And so what's going to happen is you will take one, we're at distance. We're, 500-600 feet away. He said, you're going to, unless you're a moron, you're going to take the first one, and you've got about 20 seconds to eject the cartridge, load another one in the chamber, and bolt action. And if you can quickly get a bead on one, so before you set up your first, kind of like playing pool, know where you're going to move the gun to take the second one. And I'm just like, they're not going to move? I said, are they dumber than like California doves? And he's like, oh, wait, they just have never, he said smarter, but they just don't know what's going on. So we were able to take two, which was great because we ate one in the episode and we smoked a lot of the meat. He made his ad hoc smoker out of these big giant ferns and stuff and twigs that we hung the meat on. And we were able to donate the other one, the meat, to a local school. But, oh, my gosh, carrying that stuff uphill on volcanic. I mean, it looks like tufts of grass, but it's just foot-high ankle breakers of this volcanic rock that was just, that was a crazy day, but a lot of fun.
Holy smokes.
That's incredible.
Yeah. 30 degrees in the morning, 80 degrees in the afternoon.
Oh, yeah. That's a big swing. Then you got to carry all your clothes to deal with it too.
Oh my God! And on this mountain in Hawaii, when we got to the truck, I wasn't so happy to see a vehicle as I've been. I mean, other than one time when I actually got lost with a friend, and that feeling where you finally are like, oh my gosh, I think that's our truck. So thank you. The foxhole prayer that please God, return us to our vehicle.
Adam, you had a question you wanted to ask too.
Yeah, so we started off our conversation talking about a couple of mushrooms Justin and I found. I know you've dealt with some wild edibles on your shows before. How do you think that wild plants and forest fruits like complement wild game in the kitchen? And why do you think more hunters don't play around with wild edibles? It seems there's a wild edibles camp that's often vegan oriented and a hunting camp that's separate, but here at Harvesting Nature, we it's all one, and just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, it should be all one. It's one planet. It's one continent. It's one state. It's one region. It's one acre of forest or grassland or wherever you're hunting or fishing. And, there's, as a chef, I learned a long time ago that what grows together goes together.
Definitely.
By the same token, a lot of times what one animal eats goes with that food as well. I talked about that sheep's head. I served it's coming up, I think, in next week's episode, but the sheep's head, I made a sauce out of jumbo lump crab meat, fresh jumbo lump crab meat that we picked to go with the sheep's head, which made the fish made the crab taste crabbier and the crab made the fish taste crabbier. It was a wonderful, wonderful thing. I'm not sure there's a better pairing for any. I mean, it's fall in Minnesota, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think there's a better pairing for any fall game meat than a fall harvested mushroom. Mm-hmm. I mean, turn it into a sauce, saute it in brown butter, and finish it with just a few drops of lemon juice and salt. I mean, the pairing, Mother Nature made the pairing for you. Mm-hmm, autumn berries. Sometimes you have to sweeten them, but autumn berries with autumn game meats, the same thing. Autumnal spices, which people don't think about when it comes to foraging, but I play disc golf, and there's one golf course that has the best sumac in the state there, and I always take a cone or two of the sumac, and dry it in the dehydrator and get the buds off and buzz it in the grinder. And when you make a seasoning blend of a little bit of salt, a lot of sumac, and you roll a venison medallion, a duck breast, or a trout fillet or walleye fillet in it, and just let it hit the pan, done. I mean, you don't need anything else. I mean, you can, but there's something about things that grow together going together. And I think that, look, we talked before when I was talking about the tribes people, the skill set, someone has to teach you about hunting, then someone has to teach you about foraging. And, and I will say this about mushrooms, everyone has to be very, very careful. There are a lot of species out there that can get you sick. So you never want to take something that you're not 110% sure is what it is. Now, everybody always says that. That being said, a false morel isn't going to get you that sick. I'm not encouraging people to disregard the rules, but a golden chanterelle is a golden chanterelle. A black trumpet is a black trumpet. A lobster mushroom. There are a lot of mushrooms that are singular and easy to identify, that doesn't require you to take a class, that you can read about it in a book. You can look it up online. You can put the pictures on your phone. I mean, there are apps now where you can take a picture of it and it'll tell you what it is, right? So it's really much easier for even the most amateur of foragers to collect things out in the woods. And by the way, I was talking about the squirrels and the beech nuts. There are a lot of different other plants out there that you can harvest and include in your food. There's nuts. There are berries that are drying on vines. There are, it just goes on and on and on. That really makes for some absolutely delicious food. And the same can be said in the springtime or early summer up in northern Minnesota, taking the first blueberries of the year and making a blueberry sauce. I like it sweet and sour. I love that Italian agrodolce vibe with game meat. I think is wonderful. And making a gastrique and then putting a lot of blueberry puree into it with a piece of fish is about as fantastic. Mount it with a tablespoon or so of butter right before you you pull the saucepan off the heat, along with just a seared piece of steelhead or whatever it is we're lucky enough to get in the spring here. Just phenomenal.
It doesn't get much better than that.
No, it doesn't actually.
Yeah,
and that's I think that's the great lesson that I think, we can carry as outdoors people and as people who love food, is that, we can make this as fancy and Mr. Maple Miso over here. You can get as fancy and chefy about it as you want, but at the end of the day, simply serving it. I live here in Minnesota, so we have a lot of wild rice, and good wild rice with some phenomenal autumnal game bird or hoofed animal or fish, doesn't matter. Keep it simple, but just put it on the plate. Wild food has so much more flavor, and I believe, I'm a huge proponent of aquaculture. I'm very civically involved in a lot of NGOs and nonprofits that are trying to solve some of our existential problems. We have many of them on this planet that have to do with a sustainable food system that is broken. And in desperate need of a lot of repair in different places. It's not just one hole in the pipe; it's a lot of holes in the pipe. And so, as we rebuild a better food system, I believe there's a place for wild foods in there. If everyone in America could take one meal a week, that's 52 meals a year from the wild. The studies that I've seen show a no discernible impact as long as we're taking fish from managed fisheries. We're not taking things illegally. We're making sure to play by the rules. But if we could do more harvests, if hunters could donate more wild food, we have too many laws against that. When I was in Scotland and, I'm in the kitchen with the chef doing this dinner, and, I'm like, where'd you get all the birds? And he's like, oh, my sous chef and I went and shot them this weekend. And I said, and you're selling those in the restaurant? He's like, well, yeah. I was in Croatia a couple years ago, and everyone was coming to work, the waiters and the bartenders and the bussers and the line cooks. And all of them had 5-gallon buckets filled with giant spears of wild asparagus. And I asked the owner, I said, what's going on? He goes, oh, it's asparagus season. And I'm like, yeah, that's, one of the reasons I came to this restaurant was famous for all these asparagus this time of year. I said, but what are they doing carrying it? And they're like, she looks at me like I'm crazy. She says, what do you mean? And I said, I just wasn't connecting. And she says, oh, everyone lives. This one lives 10 miles away. He lives 3 miles away. He lives 4 miles away. People walk to work or what, and I pay them to stop and harvest wild asparagus and bring it to work. So they take their buckets, and when they're filled, then they have a friend come get them. They call on their cell phone, or I'll drive to get them. And the restaurant fills up with these asparagus every day, and they make asparagus pasta, asparagus this, grilled asparagus. It blows my mind. In America, it's illegal to do that. There's something wrong with that. I know what we're all trying to stop and solve for, but I think those boundaries sometimes shoot us in the foot. I think wild food has its place, and if we can eliminate 12-13% of our factory farm foods that are killing us and the processed foods that are killing us, I think it's a really good investment in our neighbors and friends and family and fellow Americans. I don't see this as red, blue, left, right. I see this as a civic issue that requires really sound decision making on, because 20% of Americans don't know where their next meals are coming from. And that includes children. And if to have solutions for solving childhood hunger and not enacting federal federal legislation to ensure that no kid in America is ever hungry, to me is a genocidal act. If we have the ability to solve the problem, and the result is that some children will have worse outcomes. Some may die from malnutrition. Some may die from processed food-related diseases. I don't call them food-related diseases. They're processed food-related diseases. No child ever got diabetes from eating too much broccoli. Never happened, ever. We have to take a really serious look at all aspects of our food system, and it's incumbent upon all of us Americans to make sure that we are aligned there. We need a cabinet-level position for food in this country. It represents over 20% of GDP, just food in general. It shouldn't be housed in 3 other agencies, some of which don't even have cabinet-level representation. We need to have food decisions being made by smart food people in Washington, D.C., and in our state and municipal governments. And, this is not a political speech. This is simply something that there are certain decisions that need to be done municipality by municipality, because one size does not fit all when it comes to food. The issues with hunger are different in New Mexico than they are in New England. Right?
Yeah.
And the environment is different, and the resources are different, and the tax base is different. The size of the state is different. And I think it is oftentimes, look, we only have 9 states in America that have free lunch programs and breakfast for students. That's absurd, right? And those we should be taking advantage of the outdoors community that knows so much, and there's so much wisdom with fisheries that are being abused in our oceans. We're taking wild foods in some cases commercially when we shouldn't. We are not supporting aquaculture in some cases where we should. And then, we talked squirrel, pigeon, geese, which in many communities are nuisance. One year here in Minnesota, in the city of Minneapolis, they had law enforcement shooting thousands of geese. We had a big goose problem on our city lakes, and the animals going to the bathroom was creating a huge issue for streets, park benches, docks, all kinds of things. And these geese herds were really causing a lot of problems in our city lakes, where we have very dense population living around them. And I was just outraged. At the time, our governor was not a hunter. Our current governor is a hunter. And I believe if this current administration was there, he would have understood the necessity for, why are you throwing away 20,000 pounds of some of the best and most nutritious animal protein on earth when we have people who are hungry here in Minnesota? It blew my mind. I think the outdoors community has something to teach everyone about conserving our open spaces, our green spaces, our blue spaces, how to deal with food issues. I think people who hunt and fish and spend time outdoors have to have a seat at that table. I tell folks all the time, the people I know who are outdoors people are the best conservationists I know, and the most well-informed. I sat on a tractor once when I made this show for MSNBC called What's Eating America, still the best piece of work that I ever did in television. And one of my favorite lines, I was on this giant John Deere combine, and I looked into the camera and I said, if you want to understand how farms in America work, I suggest you get your ass down to a farm and walk around and talk to farmers, right? And if you want to learn about the outdoors and what we need to do to solve so many of our issues with our green and blue spaces and with our food system, I think the hunting community and the fishing community and the foraging community needs a seat at that table, because we understand, we spend time out in those environments. A lot of people making decisions about those things. Again, this is not left or right or red or blue. This is just common sense. Let's get the people who spend time in the outdoors chiming in. I mean, we need to make the decisions collectively, but it angers me that we don't have a seat at that table, and I think we should.
Hey everyone, this is Captain Steve Roger from Into the Blue TV, and as soon as I feel a little break from this heat, I know that hunting season's upon us. Actually, the first time I ever went hunting, a buddy took me. Wasn't my father or my grandfather. In fact, I took my father on his very first hunt. Well, Academy Sports and Outdoor Stores has everything to gear up for the field for less. Plus, you can shop a wide selection of ammo, shotguns, deer corn, rifle, feeder, game cameras, camo, and more from the brands you trust. Text HUNT24 to 22369 to take $20 off a $100 purchase when you shop hunting supplies at academy.com. Need a hunting license? Pick it up in-store while you're shopping.
Fishing like a local isn't just about catching fish. It's about connecting with the environment and the people who call it home. It's about hearing the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations and sharing unforgettable moments with the people you meet along the way. Fishing like a local is having an experience that stays with you forever. And with Fishing Booker, you can experience it too, no matter where you are. Discover your next adventure on Fishing Booker.
No, I agree with you. I think and we've talked about it so much, Adam and I, and the larger sort of harvesting nature community of hunting and fishing and foraging, the right to do that and the access to do that, that's a ability to solve food security problems, not just for us, but for everybody too. And I watched that, Pennsylvania has such a big program. I think Hunters for the Hungry. I follow them on social media, and I see the thousands and thousands of pounds of venison that's donated every year. And then I was talking. This was years ago. I was talking with a trapper, a wild pig trapper in Texas, and I was like, "Where? What do you do with the pigs?" He's like, "Well, we just get rid of them." And I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "We can't do anything with them." And he's like, "Then I have to pay guys to come out in the middle of the night and process them and take them someplace." He goes, "In reality, we just can't." And I was like, "Man, this is such a travesty that opportunity." I mean, if you just looked at the wild pig population in the South alone, there's some argument there whether we really want it gone, but
I was about to talk about that because that's probably the largest opportunity, where you're talking about, shoot a goose, you have a couple pounds, at a time but take some of those, big ass wild hogs down there, and you take Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia, Texas, parts of Florida. Mm-hmm. If you could have state programs that allowed us, studies have been done, cheaper to pay people to clean the animals and USDA processing plants to pack them and freeze them and distribute them than it is to subsidize food programs in those communities, which is insanely expensive.
Yeah.
And insanely expensive. And by the way, if we could enact programs like that all around the country, southern states alone could probably put 30 pounds a year on the tables of families that need healthy, clean protein resource. Mm-hmm. That is the difference. Is it going to take care of every hungry person in America? No. But if we could take care of 20%, 22%, 23%, somewhere around there, the amount of money that then would be saved that we could turn our attention to the other 70-something percent, that's where the creative thinking needs to. Everyone's like, well, if we can't solve the problem 100% with wild hogs, then why do it? It's like, why do it at all? We need 10, 12 different resources for this. Sorry, my dogs see something outside.
That's okay. Well, I think
too, a giant deer stalking me.
to add on to that, I think about if there were programs enacted to give wildlife management agencies the avenue to sort of expand on that as well. I think about Maryland, the county I hunt in, Montgomery County, just right outside DC. There's almost no limit on antlerless deer because they call it an urban hunting zone. That's right. So overpopulated with deer. It's just
that's right.
you like, what if you had the opportunity to open that up and you're like, all right, for every deer you shoot, you donate one, or like, some sort of way to manage the program. Now you enable state agencies to have this tool to go in to manage populations through hunting, but also like see those resources distributed throughout the community. I think about like similar to the way Germany sort of manages their program, like that a lot of that wild game goes back into the system. It either,
that is correct.
And I think that in the United States and even Canada too, where Adam's at, like that's such like that's a foreign concept to us to be like, wait, I shoot the deer, I don't keep the meat, it goes to the butcher, and the butcher like sells it or does whatever with it, and like, whoa, and our North American model of conservation works well, but everything is the best thing it is until something better's there.
So much to learn. So much to learn from the way people in other states do it. By the way, in Canada, depending on where you are, in what province, the chefs can take wild food that they harvest out of the water or from the land and serve it in their restaurants. Which is certainly a very enlightened concept, and I think we can start there. Chefs shouldn't have to forage, plants and quote unquote smuggle into their restaurants illegally. It's the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard of in my life. Adam, this is the first that I've heard that you're in Canada. Minnesota is the lost Canadian province. We're like your little baby bro. We're like half Canadian.
Yeah, you even have the accent, and everyone seems really nice there.
We do. We do. Same thing. Yeah, that's exactly right. We both know what a loon is.
Exactly. And I've tasted those grouse you talked about on our side of the Superior, and hot damn, are they delicious.
Whoa. That is, if you look at that little band on the Canadian side, the grouse, that's where the flavorless grouse.
Oh, yeah.
The really good ones are just a few miles south.
I see. I'll have to come and visit you.
But it's nice to know that we've hunted within eyesight of each other. It really is a superb bird. You talk about delicious. I serve that to friends, and they're like, "This is the best tasting chicken I've ever had." What is this? It's not chicken, is it? It doesn't seem like chicken. I said it's grouse.
It's chicken, but better. It's
better than
the
chicken.
Essence of chicken. If it was better and wild, and there's something amazing.
I felt that way. A lot of us have eaten farmed guinea hen in this country, but in Africa, having a chance to hunt the OG species of guinea fowl, it's just staggering how delicious that bird is. Well, now you're making me hungry. I'm excited. I get to go and feed the family now. I'm making cavatelli.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Yeah. Little tomato sauce, something very simple. We've been cooking a lot of more elaborate meals, but so I've got my cavatelli roller that I'm staring at across my kitchen counter, and my 00 flour out and getting ready to slam into cavatelli mode.
Oh, nice.
Ooh, that sounds perfect. We're eating leftover snow goose gumbo, not bad.
Ooh,
not bad.
No, not bad at all. I'm a big duck gumbo guy. That's where a lot of my legs and thighs wind up. I do encourage full utilization of the animal. And my first hunting experience ever for waterfowl was watching someone breast out a goose in the field and was throwing the rest of the carcass in a garbage bag. And I looked at this guy, I was 16, and I looked at this guy and I said, "Let me have those." And, I cleaned them. I laid them in salt, sugar, herbs de Provence, and garlic for about 2 days, then took them out of the cure, cooked them in their own rendered fat, and made goose confit out of it, and then crisped them up and served it to him a week later with roasted apples. And he's like, "This is the best tasting goose I've ever had in my life." And I said, "This is what you were putting into the garbage.
Yep.
You throw out all the time.
Yep.
You know, I mean, are you out of your mind?" And even with there's a lot of birds where the thighs are edible, but people say, "Oh, there's too much connective tissue. There's nothing in the legs." Confit that stuff, braise it, and then take the time. You just pull some of that connective tissue out, and just throw that meat in there. I mean, just like, oh my gosh,
Throw it into a crock
seconds.
pot. Throw it into a crock pot with a can of beer, if nothing else. You don't.
I knew you, Adam. You see, I knew you and your fancy mushroom talk earlier. You're a crock pot and a beer guy.
I'm not, but that's better than nothing.
Your point is very well taken. I tell people all the time, it's the easiest way to process meat in the world is just to throw it in a crock pot with a few cups of wine or a can of beer, and then clean the meat. You know, and then you can do things with it. You can cream it. You can put barbecue sauce. I mean, whatever you want to do. It doesn't have to be fancy. You know, not fancy like maple syrup miso guy over there. Justin, someday I'm going to meet you in person, and I'm going to look at you and go, "Hey, maple syrup and miso guy."
I'll bring you. I'll bring you a bottle.
Do you want to know something? This year, I think it's on a show that's going to come out in the spring for I think season 4 of Wild Game Kitchen. We just shot it, and I forget what episode it is, but as a side dish, I cut big thick planks of sweet potato and charred them on the grill, and then right before it comes off, I brush them with maple syrup and miso, sesame seeds on it, and then just let it sit for like 5 seconds. You don't want to burn the sesame seed; just want to toast them and caramelize that maple syrup and miso. And what did I serve it with? I may have served it with grilled antelope. But it was with a grilled. It was with a grilled hoofed animal. But on sweet potatoes, I'm nuts about the stuff. Maple syrup and miso is a great combination. I'm just giving you a bunch of guff.
It's okay.
Yeah. I mean,
I was gonna. I'll end. We'll wrap up here just a second because we're coming up with time. I know you want to get to dinner too. One last. So wild rice. I love wild rice from Minnesota. I was there in the spring. I picked up a bunch of bags and came back with them. We took Florida wild turkey.
What color was it?
It was dark. I don't know. I got it at Sean Sherman's store, the native store. He's got the food store there. So,
do you have any left?
No, I ate it all, and I ate it because we took it and took braised turkey legs, braised it all down, took that liquid, the chunks of turkey, put it over top the wild rice, mixed in apple cider vinegar, and a little bit of maple syrup, and ate it like a warm salad. And oh my gosh, it was like phenomenal.
The reason that I ask is that I have a lot of friends up north who are living on tribal land.
Yeah.
And because I've done a lot of work with, shot a lot of TV shows, spread their story, done a lot of fundraising and stuff like that, every year I get presents of that wild rice harvest. And I have a few bags in my cupboard from last year's harvest. One is gray, and the other one is almost as white as my T-shirt.
Wow.
And the more grayish white in that area, that's the really primo, like, head stash wild rice that they save for themselves. The commercial stuff is dark brown, and Sean would not be selling that in his store. And I know
this was hand
he's
harvested.
He's providing an outlet. Oh yeah, and I'm sure it was a really good dark gray varietal.
Mm-hmm.
The next time you're coming through Minnesota, let me know. We'll have dinner over here at my house, and I'll, because I have this one bag, and you really got to appreciate you got to be a wild rice person. This stuff is snowy white. And when I tell you, it just, in 10 minutes, it just opens up and is like, I mean, salt and the barest amount of butter, and yes, sometimes I saute a little bit of carrot, celery, and onion and deglaze it with a little sherry because it brings out all that nuttiness and really brown mushrooms in some butter and mix all that in and just eat it in front of the fireplace. It's about as good as food gets. I'm obsessed with wild rice.
Yeah. My mouth, I'm just salivating like crazy.
It's so good. It's so good. So good. Anyway.
All right. Well, any last thought? Anything you want to leave the listeners with? We've talked about so much.
AndrewZimmern.com is one-stop shopping for everything we do. You can, I'm on every social media platform there is. I encourage people to subscribe to Spilled Milk, which is my Substack newsletter, which is a really, really, really good, award-winning place, not only to get recipes and video content and stories and my crazy ass opinions on stuff and travel recommenders and everything, but a lot of info on and first peeks at things we're doing. And I have a great YouTube channel that we really got into the habit of migrating a lot of stuff onto YouTube and rotating it through. Doesn't cost anything. There's no paywall, but a lot of really cool content there. So, folks can, it's easy to find me. I'm an overexposed old man. Just I'll leave you with that that thought right there.
Adam, you got any last thoughts?
Something we never got to a lot, but it's been such a great conversation.
Canada?
Yeah. But I know that you have a lot of causes that you fight for. You pitch and you do a lot of work with different causes, and I just want, because we never got to all of them, just that we could include it in the show notes. If you could send some over, some things that you really care about.
Well, I'll give you. We could spend all day. I literally devote most of my life to that kind of stuff. I'm on the boards of several international and national nonprofits, from the Environmental Working Group to the Nature Conservancy, Partnership for Drug-Free America, Charlize Theron Africa Outreach Project, the United Nations World Food Program USA, City Harvest, Second Harvest Heartland, World Central Kitchen. I could just keep going on and on and on. And I do spend a lot of time working on those things, and there's different reasons that I align myself with those organizations and work so tirelessly for them. People can, if you go to andrewzimmern.com, no paywall, you click on the partner page, the 15 or 20 that I did the most work with, and I have the most representation, spend the most time on, are all there. And if people feel like donating to something, go ahead. What's more important is actually read the little blurb we wrote about each one. And if you see a sentence that moves you, cut and paste it, or just take the link and send it to everyone in your email list. Because awareness of these issues is 99% of the problem. If there's more awareness, the money will flow. Mm-hmm. Whether people are giving 50 cents or $500, that's not awareness is what we need of these issues. People aren't aware that we still, as much of a problem as hunger is in America, still not aware that 20% of kids in America go to bed hungry. Kids. It just boggles my mind. I'm a dad.
Yeah.
Absolutely boggles my mind. That my kid should be extra blessed because he knows where his next meals are coming from. Food is a basic human right. Mm-hmm. That is a basic human right. This is the greatest country in the history of the world, and the richest country in the history of the world, the most fantastic country in the history of the world. I love my country. I am bonkers angry that we have hungry children in America. It's tragedy. So yeah, there's a lot of information there, a lot of really good causes. Thank you for bringing that up. I will say this, shout out to all the people with the platform who do good things in their community, acknowledged and unacknowledged. And that can be the outdoors person that donates meat to a local food shelf that will take the wild meat or process it, like the Hunters for Hunger that you were talking about in Pennsylvania, Justin. A lot of people just do what they can in their communities, and that's what we need more of. Is people just those hunters understand that there's a hunger problem. They're aware of it, and they're trying to solve it. Too many people go throughout their day just absolutely unaware with blinders on that there are people in our great nation that are not being taken care of, and that is a genocidal issue, my friends, and we need to do something about it. So go to andrewzimmern.com. There's a lot of information there for a lot of really cool organizations.
Absolutely. I was just going to say thanks for coming on. Thanks for chatting with us. I think
my pleasure.
Both Adam and I grew up watching you on TV, and it's just like, it's really special to get to...
Here it comes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Make me feel old.
No.
This is the make me feel old part of the program.
Next up's we all cry together and we have a moment.
I appreciate that.
No.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's really nice of you. That's really nice of you to say. I appreciate it.
No, I think too, it's good. The hunting community, the fishing community, the foraging community is very broad, and to have such positive representation in it is a great thing. And I thank you for that. And
likewise,
just introducing people to more wild food and putting it in a positive light and breaking down those barriers, and even being willing to tackle and talk about some tough issues that some people get a little squirmy about, I think it's very respectful. And
I am the talkiest, least squirmy person that you now know.
Yeah.
So, thanks again for coming on. I'll say we'll put all the links to things in the show notes. Everybody that's listening out there, please go through, click, follow, read, share, and whatever podcast platform you're listening to. Punch that 5-star button, leave us a review, tell us we're doing right, or tell us what we're doing wrong.
Hey everyone, this is Captain Steve Roger from Into the Blue TV. And as soon as I feel a little break from this heat, I know that hunting season is upon us. Actually, the first time I ever went hunting, a buddy took me. Wasn't my father or my grandfather. In fact, I took my father on his very first hunt. Well, Academy Sports and Outdoor Stores has everything to gear up for the field for less. Plus, you can shop a wide selection of ammo, shotguns, deer corn, rifle, feeder, game cameras, camo, and more from the brands you trust. Text HUNT24 to 22369 to take $20 off a $100 purchase when you shop hunting supplies at academy.com. Need a hunting license? Pick it up in store while you're shopping.